Okay, Phil Simborg back, and I'm here again with my teaching partner, John O'Hagan. John, say hello.
Hello.
Well, John and I work together quite a bit. We give lessons together. We have many students that we share, and many times I have students that graduate after they've gone through the basic training that I give them from curriculum that I put together with help from John and Perry and Stick and David Rockwell. Then after we go through it all, then they go to John. But I also call on John whenever I have a problem. So I was giving a lesson earlier today, what we call run or stay. And this was the lesson on run or stay. And the question here is, if you're red and the score is 7 away, red's holding a 2 cube, you have a 6-5. Do you stay and try and get a shot, or do you run and guarantee you get off the back end? What do you think is the answer here? Now, you can pause the recording if you need more time, so otherwise I'm just going to forge ahead. It's clearly right to stay here, and the reasons are fairly obvious. If you look at Blue's rolls, he leaves you a double shot quite often with a 2-1, 3-1, 4-2, 4-3. That's 8 times you're going to get a double shot, and many, many times you get a single shot. Now, when you get a double shot, when he leaves 2 blots, you can actually win this game. It's not that hard if you pick up 2 checkers, and you can easily pick up 1, come back and get the other. So you can actually win this game when he leaves those 8 shots. And the rest of the time when he leaves 1 shot, you're certainly going to be a big, big favorite to save the gamble. So it's really, really obviously right to stay here. And what I do with my students, we look at 7 away, which is basically what I call pretty close to a normal match score, pretty much like money. Then we go to different scores. At 5 away, it doesn't change. Even though gammons are worth a little bit more and backgammons have different values, you still get those 8 double shots. You still get enough hits to be right to stay, but the values change. It doesn't become, it's still pretty huge to stay. So we finished with this, and one of the ways that we get smarter about positions is look at variation. So the next thing I did is I moved the 2 checkers to the 3-point, where it isn't quite so clear. At the 3-point, there aren't that many rolls that leave double shots, and there are more rolls that immediately backgammon you, where he gets off, and it is riskier, and it became a much tougher decision here. And after I saw the answers, I wasn't sure myself how you come up with the right answer to run or stay at 7 away, and at 5 away. And that's why John O'Hagan's here, because he's one of the top players in the world, and he's really an expert at analyzing these things. And I think I could analyze this and give you a good answer in about an hour and a half, but hopefully John could do it in a few minutes. So, John, why don't you tell us what you would do and how you would come to the decision to run or stay at 7 away, and then at 5 away, let's see if there's any difference and why.
Sure. Okay, when Phil first showed me this position, I wasn't really sure how to figure it out over the board. So I thought about it and came up with a method that requires a lot of crunching of numbers, but I think you can do it over the board if you sort of really bear down. And so the main idea is the correct play in a match increases your match winning chances, and incorrect play reduces them. So the question is, if you run, you are losing 4-0, okay, up to 7, which gives you about 24% match winning chances using Neil's numbers. Because Neil's number, when the trailer is 7 away, is 6.5. 6.5 times 4 is 26. 50 minus 26 is 24. Now, on the other hand,
that's very consistent with Extreme Gammon's numbers in this case, because if you go to the match equity table, which was also done by Neil, you'll see that if he wins 4 points, he's 3 away and you're 7 away. And at 3 away, 7 away, I guess I go down this column, you are 23.79. So that's pretty darn close.
Yeah. So the possible ways you can gain, on the other hand, if you keep your straggler back there in the 24 point, is you might hit a shot but save the gammon and go on to lose the game. And that's a gain for you because then you'll only be down 5 away, or you'll be down 7 away, 5 away, not 7 away, 3 away. So that's obviously a gain for you. And the big gain, of course, is when you not only hit, but you win the game. That way you are leading 5 away, 7 away, rather than trailing 7 away, 3 away. So that's the gain. The loss, of course, occurs when he wins a backgammon, because then, rather than trailing 7 away, 3 away, you're trailing 7 away profit, which is obviously a loss. So with those figures in mind, you then have to try to estimate how often each of those occur, and then multiply that times the net gain or loss in your match winning chances compared to what they would be if you just ran and gave up 4 points here. And then that'll tell you whether or not you gain by staying or if you lose by keeping the man back there. So let's first look at the loss. Okay, the loss from keeping the man on the 24-point deck. Well, if you run through all of Blue's numbers, you'll notice there are 11 numbers that bear off both checkers. Okay, 6-6, 6-5, 6-4, 5-4, 5-5, 4-4, 3-3, 3-2. Okay, so you lose a backgammon there. Do you lose any other backgammons in any other sequences? And the answer is yes, you do. Frequently, Blue will bear off one checker and leave you a direct shot with numbers like 6-3, 6-2, 6-1, 5-3, 5-2, 5-1, so on and so forth. And there are actually 20 of those numbers. And when you run through all of your possible responses, you'll notice that you usually have about 3 or 4 numbers that don't hit and that don't total 6 pips or more, so you'll get back up. Okay? So there are 20 such numbers where he will leave you a single shot. About 1/9 of those you will not only not hit, but you will also not get off the gammon. So, not get off the backgammon. So let's say you lose 2 additional backgammons there. Okay, so that's 13 backgammons you'll lose so far. Now, also Blue does have 4 double blot numbers here, 3, 2, and 2, 1. Okay. However, with those, you either hit or you run off the backgammon with every single number. So there's no extra backgammon loss there. The only other number we haven't accounted for is when Blue rolls double ones. He'll play 4-2 twice. And you will then, if you count up your possible numbers, you'll have 9 numbers that will not escape your backman, totaling 6 pips or more. So you will get backgammon if Blue bears off both of his checkers next time. So let's say that's about that one roll. Let's say you lose about 25% more backgammons there. So that adds another 0.25 backgammon. So altogether, you lose about 13.25 backgammons out of 36 games by keeping your man back there. So what is that in percentage terms? That is about it's about 37%, I think. Okay. So on those 37%, when that happens, you are down 7 away Crawford, which is about 9% match winning chance. Now compare that to if you had run from off the 24-point with this roll, you would only be down 7 away, 3 away, with about 24% match winning chances. So in other words, on the 37% of the time that you get backgammon, you lose about 15% match winning chances. So you need to multiply those two figures, 37% times 15%. So 15% of 37 is going to be 3.7 plus half of it, plus 1.85, which is 5.55. Okay? So that is your loss by staying back there. 5.5% match winning chances. So if I was doing this over the board, I would say that to myself a couple of times. 5.5, 5.5, 5.5. So I would remember it, because now we need to look at the gain side. And if the gain...
And I would use my fingers to remember 5.5. I'm putting on 5 fingers and half of another finger.
Okay. So one way or the other, the point is you need to remember that, because that's the loss. And now we then need to compute the gain and figure if the gain is greater than 5.5 or less. So there are, as I said earlier, two types of gains. And the first type are the real good sequences, where you hit and you win. Okay? Now, how often does that happen? All right, let's do a little estimating here. As I said earlier, blue has 20 numbers that leave one blot and bear off his other checker. And you will then hit about 30% of those. So that gives you'll hit 6 of those 20. Okay? But you will have hit his last checker. So you'll be probably only about 7% to win. If you always ended up with perfect distribution with your pairs on your 6, 5, and 4 points with the opponent's 15 checker on the roof, you would win that a little over 8%. But you don't always get to the perfect distribution, so probably 7% is about right. So 7% of the 6 where you hit is how often you win. So how many is that? Well, that's about 0.42 games. 0.42. Okay? So 0.42 out of 36 games is about maybe 1.3%. Okay. 1.3% of the time you will be leading 5 away, 7 away with 63% match winning chances, whereas you'd be 7 away, 3 away if you had run, and with 24%. So you'll gain 39% whenever that happens. So 39% times 1.3%. This is where the math gets kind of difficult, so let me try to figure that one out. 40% of 1.3 is, it's about 0.5%. Okay? So your gain so far is with 1/2 of 1%. Not nearly enough to overcome the 5.5%. Now, the other way you gain is when you hit and save the gammon, but you lose the game. That way you're down 7 away, 5 away with 37% match winning chances, because Neil's number again is 6.5. So 50 minus 6.5 times 2 is 37. Whereas you would be at 7 away, 3 away if you had run, which would give you 24%. Okay? So you're going to be gaining 13% whenever that happens. So how often does that happen? Well, that happens quite a bit more often. As I said earlier, on the 20 times when blue rolls a number that bears off one checker and leaves a blot, you'll hit 6 of those, okay? And I was estimating that you would win about 0.42. So let's say you about 5.6% of the time, or I'm sorry, 5.6 of those 6, you will get off the gammon. So 5.6 in terms of percentages is about 16%, I think. So 16% of the time you gain 13%. Here again, some difficult math. 16 times 13 is about it's about 2%. Okay? So far we're at like 2.5%, right? The other way that you can gain is when the opponent leaves 2 blots. Okay, so he leaves 2 blots with 4 numbers, 3, 2, and 2, 1. Okay, and you will hit that resulting blot, one of those 2 resulting blots, 2.2 out of those 4 times. It's 55%, and you'll win about 60% of that. Okay, so you will win about, actually, see here, this is so complicated. Here I kind of screwed it up. Well, what I should have done is I should have combined the wins and then just looked at the save gammon. So the wins I came up with when you hit the last checker was 0.42%. Now we're looking at 4, numbers leave 2 blocks, you hit at 2.2, you win about 1.5 of those. So let's just say you win 2 games out of 36. Okay, so on those 2 games, you are at 63% rather than 24%. Big gain. So two games is 5.5%. You gain 39%. So 5.5% and 39%. That's probably about 2%. Okay. So there you gain 2%. And then on the other times when you hit, but blue goes on to win, you will still gain because you only be down 2-0 rather than 4-0. So there you're looking at, let's see, you hit 6, so that, and you won 4.42, so that's 5.6, where you at least save the gammon. And the other way, it's I'm trying to do this in my head. It would be easier with pencil and paper, but I'm trying to do it like I do over the board. Six, save the gammon. And then this way is 7. So, and then on the, it comes to, I think, about 6.2 to 6.3 games where you will hit and save the gammon. So that'll save you 13% match winning chances. So, like 6.3 is about 17%, and you're saving 13%. 17 times 13 is about another 2%. So it looks like you're about, you're only gaining something less than 5.5%. So it's correct to stay. I mean, so it's correct to run up.
Okay, let's see if you're right. It is correct to run. And if you were to stay, you get backgammon 36% of the time.
Yeah, I said 37, so I was about right.
You said 37, so it's 36.9, so you were way off.
Yeah. And then in the wins,
for you, John, your clock just ran out.
Yeah, well, I realize that. I mean, yeah, it's...
Okay, so here is one of the best players in the world who does these computations very well in his head, about as well as anybody I know, and it was difficult, and it took quite a bit of time, and most people aren't going to do this in their head. Now, I want to tell you, I got this right, but it was a lucky guess. I just guessed. I just know that if I get backgammon, I'm going to have 9%. That much I knew. And if I just get gammoned, I got 24%. So I know that the difference, if I don't win at all, and I assume I didn't win much, which is pretty right, that I'm going to be saving about the difference between 9% and 24% is 15%. I'm saving 15% by running to not get backgammon. And I asked myself, do I think I can pick up 15% in combination of saving the gammon and winning the game by staying? And I was pretty sure I could when these two checkers were on the 5 point, and I had all those shots. And here I was pretty sure I couldn't. So I made a guess, and I happened to guess right. And guessing can get you right half the time. You can flip a coin and be right. I mean, the question here is, do you run or do you stay? And you're going to be right half the time. In fact, Jake which used to tell me that I was better off flipping a coin than trying to reason it out. That's what he thought of my reasoning ability. And I had a lot of fun one match when I had a really tough decision against Jake in the finals, and I flipped the coin and ended up winning the match because of it. So I taught him a lesson for insulting me that way. And by the way, it was a fake coin flip. I knew what I was doing before I flipped the coin. But the point is, with a little bit of intuition, you can be right half the time when you have an either-or situation. John's way is a much better way. And now I'm going to show you why John's way, if you can do it, is much better. Because when we changed the score, I thought it was pretty much obvious and pretty right to run. and by the way, not running here is fairly significant. It's a 0.065 error to stay, for all the reasons John explained. You just don't, the risk is not worth, the reward is not worth the risk. You don't save enough gammons and win enough games compared to the backgammons that you get by staying to be worth it. You could get the shot, you could get a double shot and miss it. You know, a lot of the times you miss the double shot. So even when you're so excited when he rolls a 2-1 or 3-1, you're often missing that anyway. It doesn't pay to stay. When we changed the score to 5 away, my intuition was, well, it's 5 away. If I get backgammoned, the difference between getting backgammoned and gammon isn't as high, because just getting gammoned at 5 away, because he gets to Crawford, he has that artificial advantage of my not being able to double. And what am I, 16% or 16.5%? If he gammons me, so I know that I'm throwing away 16% by getting backgammon, as opposed to getting gammon. And there is some slight chance to win the game, so I thought it might be right to stay, but I really had no definitive way to know. So John, if you were at 5 away, would you go through all the same numbers again to come to your conclusion?
Yeah, just to recap the highlights here. Again, you win, if you stay, you win about 2 games in 36, okay? And on those 2 games, rather than having 16% match winning chances, you have about 65%, okay? So there, it's a much larger game than in the previous example. And then in the other case where you hit and going to lose the game, but at least save the gammon, you save quite a bit as well, because you'll be down 5 away, 3 away, rather than 5 away Crawford. And 5 away, 3 away gives you 35% winning chances versus 16% after 5 away Crawford. So therefore, though the loss is still, the same, you lose the extra backgammon, but the gain turns out to be higher by staying back here. So it's correct to stay at 5 away, 5 away.
So when you hit the button, you'll see that it's right to stay, and it becomes not huge, but it's about a 0.024 error to run. And this is where I really did make my error, and this proves that intuition will get you to be a pretty good player. I'm a pretty good player, and my intuition and my experience makes me a pretty good player. If you want to be a great player like John and get it right on these tough ones, you have to go a lot deeper and do the kind of work that John does over the board and in practice. And by the way, I've seen John do this over the board. Over the board, if the clock is ticking, he does the same things, but he takes more shortcuts. He rounds off more in his math. He estimates more, and he's not going to take quite as long as he did and still come up with a pretty close number, because you can't, if you try to come up with an exact number, your clock will often run out. But he can still get to the right answer most of the time, or very close. So my mistake here was I knew there was more of a reason to stay at 5 away than 7 away, 7 away. I honestly just thought it would be closer, a closer decision. I really didn't think it swung the decision all the way around the other way, that it made about an 8 or 9% difference. And I actually got this part wrong, and I would have also run thinking, well, it was closer. So if you want to get it right, you really have to know how to do what John did. Now, if you're a really strong open player, you probably could follow very, very well what John was doing. If you're an intermediate player, you might have an inkling to what he was doing. If you're any lower than that, you have no clue. Basically, everything John was doing is the basis of all backgammon decisions. You are weighing how much risk are you taking by doing one thing as opposed to another, compared to how much reward you get when you do one thing or another. All cube action is based on that, and every single checker play is based on that. And the risk and reward that you get is all based on what happens to your match-winning chances by doing one thing as opposed to another. So the first step is you have to know what the match-winning chances are at every score, or know how to use a shortcut that John referred to called Neal's numbers, which is a shortcut that Neal came up with years ago. It's still pretty close. It's not 100% accurate, it never was, but it'll, with his numbers, if you memorize the how many points you add or subtract at every score for the difference of score, you can pretty well figure out what your chances are. Now, to simplify this for the lower level players, when the score is tied, you both have a 50-50 chance of winning. And every time that you have more points than your opponent, or he has more than you, then whoever's leading has a better chance of winning at any given score. Now, that changes the risks and rewards for both players in any given position. So all of these risks and rewards that John was figuring out was when the score was even. You take the same exact position and you put red a little bit more ahead, or you put blue a little bit more ahead in the match, it can totally change the decision because the risks and rewards are not the same. How much you lose in your chances of winning the match by getting gammon or backgammon are going to change very much if the score is different, if you're winning as opposed to losing in the score. So this was an easier one because the score is even. But the same principle applies to every score. So that's why I like this lesson, because it tells you that you can become a great player, but it requires more study, and there's a lot more to backgammon than the eye. It's not just about taking a wild guess and shuffling the checkers. There's a lot to learn. That's the bad news. The good news is, if you take the time to learn it, you'll win more. You'll be able to beat the next guy. If you want a simple game that doesn't take a lot of study to get good at, take up tic-tac-toe. And always go first, and always put your X in the middle, and you'll never get beat. So that's not what backgammon is all about, and I think this illustrates that. But it's also, from a short standpoint, I came fairly close. But now when we've done this position, it becomes so incredibly obvious how much you have to stay at just about any score when there's so many more chances to get double shots and shots when he's here and when he's here. So John and I, and anybody who's seen this video or studied this, wouldn't hesitate 2 seconds to stay in this position. We might hesitate a second or two depending on the score in this position, and now we're alerted that it's going to take some real work depending on the score at this position. And in this position, it's probably a no-brainer to run at almost every score because of the great number of times you get backgammon and the few number of times you get shots and double shots. So because we've done all of this hard work here, we have a very good reference for when you move these checkers around a little bit. So that's going to help you quite a bit. Now, I'm not going to complicate things for you at this moment, but there are times where you would run anyway when your opponent has 2 or 3 checkers, if running is a way to run off the gammon. So when you put all the checkers in, not in this exact position, but there's all kinds of reasons why you might run, because you can run off the gammon when he has something like this, as opposed to when you're out here, and even if you run, you're not going to get off the gammon. So you also have to look at this side of the board. In the position we looked at today, we had a pretty solid board, and if we hit, we had a very, very strong chance of getting off the gammon. In the same exact position that John was talking about, if you had a lousy board, and after you hit, you still are likely to get gammon, and you very rarely are going to win the game, that's going to make you want to run at just about any score. So at 5 away, 5 away, look at this. You're running. Here it is, 5 away, 5 away. A minute ago, we were staying in this position, and the difference is, even after we hit it, we've got a lousy game. So you have to look at both sides of the board. You have to look at all of the checkers to make the decision. Anything else to add, John?
Yeah. Getting back to the reason you're supposed to run at 7 away, 7 away, and stay at 5 away, 5 away. Check out these numbers here. At 7 away, 7 away, the difference between losing 4 points and being down 4-0 to 7 versus 6-0 to 7 is a difference of 15. So that's the loss from being backgammon. Okay? The loss from being backgammon in a 5-point match at 2x2 is 16. So the losses between the two are about the same. 15 on one, 16 on the other. Now let's look at the gains here. When it's 7 away, 7 away, and you win the game, you'll be ahead 2-0 to 7. So you'll be gaining 39% over the 24% that you would have if you had run, because you'd now be ahead 2-0 with 63%. So you gain 39. In a 5-point match, going from 0-4 Crawford to 2-0 lead gains you 49%. So the gain is higher. And the other gain is when you hit but you get off the gamble and go on to lose the game. And the gain at 708, 708 is only 13% in terms of match winning chances, whereas here it's 19% in a 5-point. So that's the reason it's right in one to stay and it's wrong in the other.
So it's more about the gain than it is the loss.
Yeah, the loss is virtually the same in both. It's 15 in one, 16 in the other. But the gains are a lot higher in a 5-point.
Okay, so even before you did all the math and all the study, you have an antenna that goes up that at 508, 508, you might be much more likely to stay than at 708, 708.
I don't think I knew that, really, going in. Until you sent me this problem, I had never given this kind of a problem much thought, and I wasn't, as I wrote back to you, I wasn't really sure how to figure it out. But I thought about it some more, and I came up with this idea. Somebody else might know an easier way to do it, and if so...
Well, if we do, we'll hear from them, because people are not shy about telling us when they've got a better way or when we're wrong. So that's one of the beauties. If you're thin-skinned, you don't do what John and I do. You don't make videos and you don't make posts saying what you think is right, because if you can't take criticism or hear a better way, then you shouldn't be posting, because we get it all the time, and it's good. I look forward to it. It's a learning experience when someone shows me a better way. And by the way, I can't tell you how often it happens. I find a better way or a better approach or a reference position or a new trick to learn how to count gammons or count pips or whatever. Every single time somebody says, "Nah, Phil, there's a better way," or "You weren't quite right here," that's where you learn. So I'm happy to learn, and if we do hear it, you'll hear it from us. I'll be sure and post it. Okay. John, thank you very much for donating this time and effort and energy and the mental capacity. There's probably maybe 10 or 15 people in the world that could do what John does, but I don't think there's more than 2 or 3 that might be able to explain it as well. So that's why he's such a great teacher as well as a great player. Thank you, John.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.